G'day humans, Chris Stead here. Today we're heading into the kitchen to check out the just announced Thermomix TM7. Now I've got stills, I've got video, I've got a breakdown of all the specifications, changes, the price, the release date, all that good stuff. Let's jump in. Now, even if kitchen appliances aren't your thing, I'm sure you've heard of the Thermomix. This multi-cooker phenomenon has been around with us for decades, and probably every single kitchen in Australia would have one if they weren't so darn expensive. But even at that big asking price, it's pretty hard to resist for many people. It's super easy to use, it's super helpful, it delivers great food, especially for families. It just makes life a lot easier in the kitchen. I've got to admit, I've been pretty impressed by the time spent with the TM6. Now that came out in 2019, so it's been 6 years between drinks, and that's an age in the technology space. So what's changed? Is it good? Is it going to sell 8 million units like its predecessor and redefine the way that we do our food and end up in thousands more kitchens across the country, tens of thousands? Well, that's what we're going to find out. So let's dive in and take a closer look at the Thermomix TM7 from all the information I've received directly from the PR company. Now, let's start with the release date and price. So interesting model they've got going here. So basically, they've got a mid-April launch, so to speak. Now, depending on where you live, it will start shipping in mid-April 2025, or you'll just be able to pre-order it from that date. Either way, you will be able to go into retailers and get demonstrations, test it, see it for yourself, and kind of see what you're getting yourself into. But in places like Australia, that's just a pre-order date. In places like the UK, for example, it will start shipping in mid-April 2025. However, they have said that it could take up to 14 weeks to actually get out. So while it's shipping, many customers in Europe may not get it till, that September, August, September, even October date. As for us here in Australia, we've definitely been told we won't be getting any units in our houses until at least the second half of 2025, so at least July. But based on what I just told you about what's going down in Europe, I suspect that means that we won't see any units in our homes here till at least September, probably October, and potentially even November. But I think we'll definitely get it before that kind of Christmas buying period dries up, because they'll massively lose out if they didn't achieve that goal. So a bit of a wait still to come, and we're not 100% sure when we're gonna get it in our hands, but at least we know it's coming, and at least you know that you can throw some money down from that mid-April 2025 date if you wanna make sure you're right at the front of the queue. Now, as for price, here in Australia, we've got some good news. There hasn't been a huge price increase despite the 6 years and all the tech advancements which we're about to go through. So the TM6, the Thermomix TM6, currently retails here in Australia for $2,579, and the TM7 will launch here at $2,649, so $70 more, a little bit more, but not dramatically more, not a huge price increase. And definitely if you are saving up or budgeting for a TM6, the TM7 now comes straight into the equation for you. In fact, they've already said that if you've already ordered the TM6 and it hasn't arrived yet, they're just going to roll that straight over to the TM7. So you just saved yourself 70 bucks and you're going to get the new machine. Hooray. But it's also worth noting that there is a subscription service, so that's a bit of a bummer. It's a bit of a pain point. You're spending $2.5 grand on a machine. You probably don't want to have to spend extra, but there is the Cookidoo recipe service that is very much integrated with the new machine, as I'll go into in a sec, and that's going to set you back here in Australia, at least at the current prices, $89 a year. Whether it will go up or not post the launch of the TM7, I'm not sure. It would be unwise of them to do that straight away, especially considering the staggering of the shipping dates. But yeah, either way, there's going to be an added expense year on year moving forward if you want to get the most out of this new machine. Now, as I mentioned, I've got all the release specification details for you now, so let's go in and analyze those. So the first thing to make clear is that Thermomix were very adamant that the only thing in the TM7 that's the same as in the TM6 is the mixing blade. So the mixing blade is identical between the two models, but everything else has been redeveloped, everything else is new, and so that's quite a radical change. Now, the obvious change straight away is the design. So you've got this new sleek black design. It's quite a bit different to look at and has a much different footprint. So it's a much more, I think it looks like a much more compact base. So no final dimensions were given, but when you look at it, it looks a lot smaller. And that could be a bit of an optical illusion because we're losing that kind of big cradle that was behind it. And it's definitely gonna make it feel less dense on your desk, on your kitchen bench. It's gonna feel like it's taking up less volume, even if that bottom base ends up being roughly the same size. The overall space, I think, is definitely gonna be more compact, and it's definitely gonna look better on the bench as well. Now it's got an elegantly pleated mixing bowl. Now that's their words. Now that's in a textured, so it's basically a textured exterior that's aiming to feel more stylish and also mimic a trophy feel. So like, you know, when you create some cool meal, you feel like you're holding up a trophy when you pull it out. But it's interesting because the mixing bowl terminology is a little bit confusing because as you can probably see from the footage, the mixing bowl, the traditional kind of mixing bowls, you know, jug style design, is actually sitting inside that black case. So the black case is now almost the machine, and then the actual mixing bowl sits on the inside, but they have been referring to both as the mixing bowl. Now, using the black material, part of that is the sustainability aspect of it, which Thermomix is looking to do more with. So basically, with the black, you can now hide more recycled materials within that design without it affecting the style and the look of it, which obviously from the sound of it is more of a challenge with a white product. So we are now seeing the use of recycled materials in the design of the Thermomix TM7, although they didn't go as far as telling me what percentage of the product is recycled materials. But you know, there is a push towards sustainability from the company. Now that mixing bowl also has now a improved insulation to it. So that's not only going to keep the food inside warmer for longer, but it's also going to trap in more sound and also make it safer to handle because that heat won't be coming from the inside outside as easily. One of the other benefits of having that lack of a cradle design is that it's now got 360-degree accessibility. So you can kind of approach it from any angle. You don't have to approach it from the front because it doesn't have that cradle design around it. So that's going to make it a lot more flexible for different types of kitchen layouts, much more easier to access, use on an island bench from any direction or in a corner, that kind of thing. So I'm happy they've added that versatility. As well as a better looking machine, it's actually functionally a better machine too, which is very, very cool. Now the mixing bowl has a maximum capacity of 2.2 litres. Now that hasn't changed, and that's a little bit of a disappointment, definitely for us, the family of 5. One of the drawbacks of the Thermomix was it was often challenging to create a family-sized meal in that kind of 2.2 litre capacity space. But I understand their reasoning, and their reasoning is basically that they don't want to have to change the don't want to have to change the 100,000 odd recipes that they already have in Cookidoo because they've changed the litres. And I can kind of understand that, but also in this day and age, I feel like that's something that a computer could calculate and do without too much hassle. It's just maths, or just math. And I'd be interested to see whether in the future, considering it doesn't have that cradle design and therefore it's not restricted by the actual hardware, how big that mixing bowl can get, whether they'll end up selling bigger capacities that will fit in this machine in the future. That'll be very interesting, and I'll be definitely watching out for that. I'm sure it won't come cheap, even if they do it. Now, why the mixing bowl capacity hasn't changed, the total capacity has. So the Thermomix TM7 Vorwerk set, so with the tray, the whole Vorwerk set together with the mixing bowl is 6.8 litres, which is up from the 5.5 litres we saw on the TM6. So basically the Vorwerk has a new rectangular design, which is set to allow for basically more room for food creations. In fact, they're saying you got 45% increased steaming space with the TM7 over the TM6. Also redesigned is the spatula. So that's now inspired by a Japanese santoku knife, which is to be said to make it more versatile, be able to do more with it. But possibly the most obvious redesign outside of losing the cradle is that screen. So we've now got a much larger, crisper and easier to read 10-inch multi-touch display. Now, no resolution was offered in the specifications or from the PR, so I can't tell you whether that's a 1080p screen, I can't tell you whether it's 720p. I doubt it's OLED. I'd say they're probably stuck with LCD, which is what we saw in the previous variant. But I would suspect the resolution's at least 1080p, especially if they're touting the fact that it's a lot crisper and easier to read. With the addition of this larger screen, so I think it was 6.8 inches in the TM6, so it's, you know, it's grown significantly to 10 inch, but we have lost the analog dial. So we don't have that knob anymore. And I'm not over the moon about it. I do really like that tangible feel of being able to, you know, twist the knob left and right to find the settings that you want, and having that kind of like, yeah, that tangible feedback that you're actually making a change. Now, in a lot of the devices that I test on this channel and in life in general, as soon as you've got the touch screen, unless that touch screen's something else, quite frequently it doesn't react to touch, or you don't know if you've operated something or not, or turned it on properly or not, especially when you're dealing with foodstuffs. You get flour and moisture and things like that on your fingers and hands, and then you're trying to activate a touch screen. Not only is that damaging the touch screen and making a mess on it, often your touch isn't even red as well. So it'll be interesting. That'll be definitely a part I will be testing once I get hands-on with this, to see how that touch screen actually goes and how responsive it is once you're, you know, in the depths of cooking and covered in whatever it is you're prepping. They're also saying there'll be a seamless integration between Thermomix and the Cookidoo recipe subscription service that's accessible via this screen, as well as synchronizing with PCs and smartphones as well. It was pretty integrated last time, so it'll be interesting to see what they mean by that, like how much more integrated will it be. I suspect potentially it ties in with upgrades to the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth in the TM6 was Wi-Fi 5 and Bluetooth 4.2. That's now, you know, quite outdated. We now have, you know, up to Wi-Fi 7, up to Bluetooth 5.4. They haven't confirmed what standards they will be using in this machine. I suspect at least Bluetooth 5.3 and at least Wi-Fi 6E, which will create a much more smoother and faster and more responsive experience, both with the internet and with other devices that are connected. So that could be what they're referring to. But we do know that in Cookidoo now, we're going to have personalized profiles and also customizable recipes as well. To be able to, you know, engage with it a lot more and be able to do a lot more things specific to your use cases and your interests and your needs, which is definitely a level up, but not unexpected in 2025. We're seeing this everywhere. Elsewhere, we've got an improvement to the engine. They didn't go into the specifics about the RPMs, the watts, how much more it is, other than saying it is more powerful, yet they are saying it's also quieter. It's still made in Germany by Wuppertal Laken, and they say they're calling it a truly silent motor this time. But obviously when you're chopping and doing stuff like that, that's going to make some sound, but they're definitely saying that it will be a quieter device overall, especially when you combine it with the insulation in the mixing bowl. This is a great thing. It's very loud, the TM6. So anything to reduce the sound is definitely a positive and an improve. Also interesting is they've now got digital twin mirrors, which allow for real-time weighing of ingredients and step-by-step guidance. Now, I'm intrigued by this because they didn't go into any more detail, and I would have called it real-time weighing in the TM6, but they've made a point of saying these digital twin mirror setups are going to provide real-time weighing. So the step-by-step guidance might play more into it. So as you're maybe customizing or experimenting or doing things like that, you might get better guidance on what's going on. It might be able to jump into the recipe at exactly the right moment based on what you're putting in there. I don't know how that's exactly going to work, but they're definitely touting it as a big new feature, a key feature in the updates to the TM7. So watch this space on that one. Definitely something that you can immediately see as an improvement is the new locking mechanism on the mixing bowl. So as well as improving safety, this will allow you to have open lid cooking. So be able to open the lid while you're cooking and get in there and either see it or interact with it up to a speed of 2.5. So that's going to be really interesting. I'm really looking forward to testing that. Thermomix is touting a more modular, updated user interface that allows for new features to be added over time. It's kind of an idea of a platform. I'm going to go into more depth in that in a second, but that's interesting and definitely up to the modern standards. It's still being assembled in France, and all the equipment, everything is going to be dishwasher safe except that base. As to what you get inside the box, you get the base, of course, you get the mixing bowl, spatula, varoma, butterfly whisk, mixing knife, simmering basket, and you'll also get a 3-month trial to the Cookidoo recipe service. So there we go, guys. That's a breakdown of the specifications, a bit of a run through about my initial reaction and feedback to what they're going to be supplying with the Thermomix TM7. Also a look at where it's upgrading from the TM6. There's still things that we don't know, obviously, with the strength of the engine, the incremental weighing, like how's that going to go? Is it going to hit those marks with the Bluetooth and the Wi-Fi? Some of the big questions that straight away came to my mind were the dimensions. Like, it obviously looks a lot more svelte, a lot more smaller, but is it? Is that screen waterproof? I'm really interested in that. They're going to be this big 10-inch screen right there when you're moving things around and mixing stuff. So is that got a weatherproof weighting? Is it like, IP68 or something like that? Doubt it's IP68, that means it can be submerged, but surely it's going to have to be waterproof in some capacity. So definitely would have liked to have got some information about that. Then there's backwards compatibility, and that's one of the big questions to me. So what's it going to work with that you might have already assembled with your TM6 or even your TM5? Because the TM6 and TM5 had some backwards compatibility with your attachments and your accessories. So what's going to move forward and work with the TM7 from your TM6, or you're going to have to start again because it's a radically redesigned product. So that's going to be a very interesting point, and I hope that we get some information on that shortly. But the platform thing I just want to quickly touch on. So I mentioned before that they're seeing this as a modular design and they're calling it a platform rather than a product. Now, if you're not familiar with the video gaming space or the technology space, you may not be familiar with this as a term. But basically the idea of a platform is where you've got your hardware and your hardware is built in such a way that all the things it can do may not be available at launch, and that it can be software updated to be able to add new features and functionality and build on it. And basically it's a platform, as you can imagine, a foundation for more experiences which are going to come around it, rather than a product that is going to be usurped one day. A product that's going to stand for a long period of time and be added to. We see this with like online games, like say Fortnite, for example, is a classic example of a game that would consider itself to be a platform through which you do experiences. So it's going to be interesting to see how it works out. They've already announced two things that we're going to see this platform grow with in the future. One's going to be voice control. So you'll be able to use your voice, which will actually get past my concerns about not having a knob and touching screens with dirty hands. The voice control has been one, and the other one is AI integration. So that's really, really interesting. I don't know how an AI can help with cooking, but we're going to discover this. I can imagine when you're getting into experimentation and customization and that style of things, then maybe the AI, the machine learning, or some sort of generative AI, like producing recipes out of nowhere. I don't know, that's going to be a really intriguing space, but AI is going to come to it in the future. It could just come down to being more efficient. Yeah, so those are two things they've already announced will come as additions to the platform, which is the TM7 in the future. So we'll have to keep our eyes out for those. And yeah, it means that we may see more than a 6-year life cycle this time, because it's intended to grow over time. And then they're going to probably add in those expenses or get more revenue through the things that they add. Maybe we might have to pay for some of those features as what we would call in gaming DLC, but we'll find out in the future anyway. In the last 6 years, there's been no shortage of alternatives in entering the market, trying to usurp the Thermomix, usually coming in with not quite as many features, but a much lower price point, and trying to, be something of a Thermomix experience for people who can't afford the full Thermomix experience. Look, arguably nobody's done it to a completely fulfilling degree, but there's definitely some really good product out there that can do many of the things that the Thermomix can do, if not all of them. So it's a bit more at stake this time. They're going to have to really hit it out of the park. And from what I've just taken you through, from what we've seen so far, it's certainly heading in the right direction. I can see a lot of people being interested in upgrading here. And I can certainly see people who haven't entered in this space yet, but have got a taste of it with some of these other products that we're seeing in the market, will probably be tempted as well. But the proof will be in the pudding. So make sure you stay tuned to the channel, because I will be getting a unit in. I will be doing a review of it for sure. And obviously keeping up to date with some of the holes which are still missing in our knowledge about this, so we can get a better idea of what to expect if you're going to start throwing that kind of money down on a pre-order for a machine. You need to know, right? That's what I think anyway. Anyway, I'm Chris Stead. Like I said, keep an eye on the channel. There's plenty more content out there. I'm sure you'll love it. And until next time, I'll check you later. Ew.